Well, hello everyone. My name is Alison Woodall and I'm a relocation specialist. That means I get to help you with the financial, logistical and emotional issues that make moving to a new state so stressful. And today I am talking to Alfredo Malatesta about moving from California to Tennessee. Alfredo, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Well, I would love to kind of start at the beginning of your journey because you weren't born in the USA, you were born in Lima, Peru. How did you get from Lima to California?
Luckily, there were airplanes at the time. And so my family and I, when we made the voyage and I was a younger kid, we moved to Los Angeles because I had a little bit of family there already. And we're trying to get away from all the extreme terrorism that was going on in the country at the time, horrible economic scenarios. If you were to look at just the history books about life in Peru back in the day, you would see that it was just plagued with all kinds of Marxist terrorism, socialism. It's just a horrible place to be at that time. And you know, what really sold my family on moving to the States was the standard in which things were done in the US, quality of life here, the opportunity. It was just a great platform for anybody to come and be successful if you wanted to be successful. And so my parents thought that was probably the best option for us. So we got on a plane, we came to the US and we sought refugee status at the time, but we couldn't get it. So we kind of conveniently overstayed our visa and found a way to become legal citizens after many years. And we finally became legal citizens, or residents first, and then legal citizens. And we stayed in the Los Angeles area. And that's where I've kind of lived most of my life.
All right. And you had a great childhood. You said you went to private school because even back, in the 80s, the public school wasn't very good in California. Is that right?
It is so funny. So move up here from Latin America and we moved out to an area of the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles. And when my parents were trying to make a decision of where to send us to school, they saw the public schools and they were like, absolutely not. And so they spent every penny that they made on sending me to private schools in the area, from Catholic parochial schools to eventually private high school. So I felt very fortunate and I definitely got an amazing education from it, but they were always astonished by the fact that the level that the public schools were, even during that time. Mm-hmm. So if you can imagine, that was back in the mid to late 80s. Imagine where we're at nowadays with that.
Yeah, it's very scary. I mean, I grew up obviously in the English education system, which is very different from the American education system. I don't know whether it's better or worse. I mean, that's kind of comparable, but having traveled all over the states, the education system varies significantly within each state. And then you went to UCLA for college?
For college, I was lucky to be able to get into UCLA. So I got into UCLA and it was something where what's funny about that specific experience is that I'll never forget my college counselor in high school at the private school that I was in. She asked me, so where would you want to go to college? When we were having our interview when I was about a junior and in high school. And I said, oh, I guess I'd like to go to UCLA. And that's the only college I really knew because my parents didn't go to college in America. And so they never really, put me on that path, right? It wasn't such a big thing. They knew I should go to college, but they didn't know the difference between UCLA or Cal State Northridge. So I said, well, I'd like to go to UCLA just because I had some friends that I used to surf with that went to school there. And so when I said that to her, she said, oh, I wouldn't bother applying. I said, why not? Well, your grades aren't good enough. And I have straight A's and this and that. And she was like, well, I don't think you're good enough to get in. And I said, okay. Something I think lit a fire within me that I'm like, I'm going to prove her wrong and I'm going to find a way to get into UCLA and just prove her wrong once and for all. And so what I did was when everybody was applying to the College of Letters and Science, which is where most people apply for all your standard majors, I knew that I had musical talent because I played in bands and I was a musician. And so I applied through the School of Arts and Architecture, where I actually had to do probably 3 times the amount of work to get into college that way. I had to get additional letters of recommendation. I had to write all these extra essays. I had to have a performance in front of a committee. I had to do so much to get in, and I was willing to do the work. So I wasn't scared of hard work. So I did it. And not only did I get in, but I got in with a scholarship for my very first year of college, which was amazing. So I proved everybody wrong. So I think ever since that I had that experience in life, I have always chosen to do in a different way, an outside the box way. I don't conform to the same way of doing everything. And especially when I see everybody doing one thing, I usually opt to go in a different direction.
I think it's sometimes, you know, when you see a problem, instead of saying, oh, well, I can't even try, it's thinking, how can I make this work? What's the solution? What are 10 things I could do to try and make this work, and see that as the opportunity rather than just a roadblock. So after UCLA, were you still loving LA, or were you starting to become a bit disillusioned?
Well, you know what? The 90s was really great in LA. Growing up there was fantastic. But when I graduated high school in 1996 is when I started noticing things. All of my friends' parents that graduated with me, they all started moving out of state. And the friends that I went to school with, many of them were moving out of state or moving out of the Los Angeles area. And everybody was already over it, it seemed. I was like, why is everybody moving out? Everybody was getting out, and they were moving to Colorado, Washington State, Arizona, moving everywhere else. And I was like, okay, very interesting. So I didn't pay much attention to it, but because I was into music, I got into the music industry in Los Angeles. And it was at sort of its peak moment in the early 2000s there, and I had a great experience in the music business. And I loved it. And, you know, it wasn't until I got out of the music business and started working in the apparel business and the fashion business that started seeing other things about Los Angeles that were really questionable. You know, I travel around the world to different manufacturing countries, or to manufacture goods in other countries. And I couldn't help but to notice that the factories in other countries were a lot cleaner and more sophisticated and more professional than the factories in Los Angeles. And I was like, wow, I thought it was the other way around, right? And then when I launched my own business in 2006, and I really started having to pay attention to what I was paying in terms of taxes, what it took to get a business off the ground, what it took to just, you know, get ahead and let your business reward you for all the work and time that you're putting into it. When I started really paying attention, as when I realized, gosh, this is a really challenging place to move ahead in. And I certainly wasn't born with the resources others have. So I had to work a little bit harder, but it was just becoming, I really was paying attention to every dollar and also to the quality of life. And it just didn't seem to be getting any better. So after a few years of doing that is when, with all the travels I did around the country, is when I started really seeing how life in other cities were, because I got to spend a lot of time in other cities. It wasn't just like in the music industry where you go into a town and you're out within 24 to 48 hours. I actually was spending bigger chunks of time in different places and coming back year after year. And what my wife and I noticed, because we also worked together and traveled together, is that every time we were in the South, we were the happiest we ever were. The people were the friendliest. Everybody was welcoming. There was a bigger sense of community. It's a beautiful area. We love the history and everything about there was a culture there. There was some kind of unified experience. It felt like the United States that we moved to and wanted to live in. And so when, and there are beautiful places all around the country. I think just the South, for some reason, I felt more at home in the South. I felt like I was in South America, to be honest. There's, I think, more similarities between the Southeastern United States with South America than there are with California and South America.
Well,
right?
When we were talking earlier, I loved what you said about how you never see flags in LA, but in the South, everybody has a flag outside their house, and their Southern pride is a real thing. I mean, my husband's born and raised in Georgia, and my kids were born and raised in Georgia, and we just indoctrinate them into pride in their heritage and being not just necessarily American, but Southern as well. And so it is a real thing. So now you're in the Nashville area. What was it specifically that took you to that area?
Great question. To go back to your point is about things like flags, right? And patriotism and the culture in general. It feels good to belong to the United States. I'm so upset at listening to how many people are born in this country and have all the only advantage you need in this country is to speak English, to be honest. And you know what, and willpower. And you can, and really the opportunity is even and equal for everyone and anyone, no matter where they come from, no matter what their background is, skin color, whatever. They make a big deal about it right now, but we are all so fortunate to be living here. And so it's sad when people don't take the time to respect this country and to really feel the patriotism and what it feels like to be on the same team. So I love that feeling about being, you know, part of Team USA and being part of this country in the South. So I love that.
Well, something else you'd said when we spoke to earlier, which I loved, was immigrants should move to a new country to contribute and not to take from the country or to try and change it. And I think that's so true. When you move from one state to another, you have a tendency to want to take all the things that you love and try and put them into that state. And you can still do the things that you love, but when I move to a new state, I want to see what the locals do. How can I get involved in what they do and eat what they do and drink what they drink, so that and add to their community. So I thought that was a really good point.
Well, you need to embrace it and contribute to making it better. You know, I think that many people, that especially in California, you know, their question is, where do I get the same weather as California? And where do I get the same fresh produce from California? You know what? There's great things everywhere. And by the way, there is fresh produce everywhere and organic restaurants. I don't, you know, people shouldn't be looking for a replacement for California. If you're going to make that effort to move to a new state, go to the new state to embrace the new culture. You don't need to lose your own culture or your previous culture. Continue celebrating it, but really come into the new state or the new city and go there to respect the locals, to embrace them, to be friends with them, to really be part of that community. It is so important. Just how, you know, as an immigrant from another country, that was what I was taught is, you're coming here to the US, come to be American. You're not, it doesn't mean you're going to lose who you are. You're not going to lose your Peruvianness, but you need to embrace what the customs are and what everybody here is into, and be part of it, because that's going to help you integrate and just have more success within those communities and bring your best from where you're coming from. Deliver that so people feel that, you know what, you're contributing your best to the community as well.
Totally agree. So Nashville area, there's a lot of people who they love the idea of Tennessee, but they maybe put off Nashville presuming it's suddenly all liberal. That's not been your experience?
Well, in every major city, urban centers always attract liberal-minded folks because it's just the nature of, you know, all the elements that happen in an urban setting. That's just part of their DNA and what makes them, you know, feel good to live in a place like that. Unfortunately, we're never going to get rid of liberal-minded people or people that think differently than us. So we all have to, no matter what, learn to coexist. However, what I did like about the Nashville area in general, and when I mentioned Nashville, it's really the entire area, right? So Nashville is one of those cities where if you drive 10 to 15 minutes in that direction or in that direction, all of a sudden you're in a whole different area. It is extremely conservative all around. That's just Tennessee. Look, you can look at the voting stats for yourself. That's what Tennessee feels like. That's what every other, you know, city in the South feels like. Just go. These cities are not like Los Angeles, where it takes you 3 hours to drive from one end to the other with no traffic, right? The counties are a lot smaller. So we're talking about a small area. So I like all the things that are within the city of Nashville, and it is thriving and growing. And there's so many amazing things coming along, and all the entertainment that I liked, all the concerts that were not just country music, all the kinds of music that you like, it all goes through Nashville. It's a great entertainment center. Tons of exciting things happening in the world of business here. It's a very strategic place to be in. So I love that about the growth of the city. I wanted to be part of that growth. Now the suburbs are phenomenal because they're growing in the same exciting fashion as well. They don't rely on the urban center, they rely on different resources, but they're also growing. There's exciting things coming out this way too. So not too many of us get the chance to be part of a city where it is on the up and up. It's just like surfing. When you see the set is coming in on the horizon, you want to go put yourself in position so that you can catch the best wave and get the best ride, right? So I kind of felt that I could see on the horizon what was happening in Nashville. And we're talking back in 2014 is when we started really looking at coming out this way, 2013, 2014. And when we saw that, we're like, we need to jump in, into position here and get ready for it. And so when we moved in 2017, we thought we were late to the party. And as I said, funny enough, a couple of years go by, and then COVID is like, hold my beer, right? And there were different, things happening as well. And it's continuing. I mean, we're continuing to see the growth happen here. Now, people-wise, I love the people here. No matter whether they're liberal or they're, conservative, everybody is welcoming here. There is a sense of community. There's a sense of belonging. There's a sense of camaraderie. Everybody's on Team Nashville, Team Tennessee. I love being part of that. And I love being able to contribute. So, it was, we run a national business. So being in Nashville is also great because, especially for the e-commerce side of our business, 65% of our packages get to our customers in 1 to 2 days. So it's a very strategic place to be in. Also, there's almost like every time I speak to somebody, whether they're in New York or in, Los Angeles or even in Dallas, and I say that I'm calling from Nashville, people are excited to hear that I'm calling from Nashville. Everyone's curious about it. There's somewhat of a sense of excitement around what's happening in the city. With LA, I think if I said I was from Los Angeles, oh, that's nice. But I know that they were thinking something else of me with that label, right? Out here, the community, everybody loves to support each other. All small businesses like to support one another. It's less cliquish than it is in Los Angeles, I felt. And it's just a great environment because everybody's putting their best foot forward. Things are very well done out here. And it's very easy to get a business off the ground and lots of tax advantages for anybody who, has their own company out here. So I absolutely love the environment here. It's been great for our business, despite all the challenges that we've had, with things like the lockdowns and everything else.
Well, so my question about business is that there may be people who have a business in California somewhere and want to transfer their business, say, to Tennessee. I'm not a legal expert. I have no idea how you would actually close a business in California and move to Tennessee or to a different state. Is it challenging to do that?
Not challenging, but there's some things that you really want to pay attention to and speak to a local CPA about. Okay. So if you have an existing business, like we did, and we moved it out here, one of the things that you really have to do is look into changing into being a Tennessee state LLC. We were a California S corporation. For tax purposes and to take advantage of everything that Tennessee has to give on that front, you want to switch your business entity. Did that create a few challenges? A few. It's not a very complicated process, but a CPA and a business attorney can help you out. And there's a lot of ways to do it yourself and then close out your California business. Okay. In my particular case, we kept an office and some employees in Los Angeles. And over the course of a year and a half, we kept making the switch. So as somebody resigned from their position, we just didn't replace them in California. We just hired somebody in Tennessee. And it just little by little, everything balanced itself out over the course of about a year and a half. And it wasn't too challenging of a situation. The only bad part is those first 2 years of living here, I ended up paying California state income tax, or a portion of thereof that I had to pay, just because of the, what do they call it? The nexus of our business in California. Okay. But there's many great networking groups out here. I think there's an opportunity for all kinds of businesses to come out here. I could really speak to smaller size businesses from my experience, right? But I think any e-commerce business could do great. There's every kind of vendor that is available out here to work with, to support your business. There's also an opportunity with the amount of growth that's happening out here. Think of it this way, contractors and like in construction, for example, many of them are 4 to 6 weeks out from being able to show up at your place, sometimes longer. If you open anything, even a dry cleaning business, you're going to succeed. There's so much growth happening, and there's not enough businesses coming to the area to support the growth. Another thing I've noticed is recently there's all these auto shops that have opened up in the Spring Hill area, south of Nashville. I'm like, why are there so many damn auto shops and tire shops? Think about it. Those companies, they have all the research on demographics, right? They know exactly how many auto shops and tire shops a particular area with a certain population can support. So an area like this, like in Spring Hill, perhaps, let's just say there's 200,000 people, maybe 2 to 3 car shops or auto shops is not enough. So they need to, maybe the real number is about 8. It's just, we see it differently because they're all more compacted, closer to one another on a main strip than they are in other areas with similar, population size. But you got to pay attention to those things. There's a lot of banks coming in. That means that there's a lot of people with a lot of jobs with money that are moving to the area, and the way it's growing, they need more options. So it's a very, very exciting time to look all around this particular region of Middle Tennessee. When people I've seen online that say, oh no, it's overcrowded, I don't know what they're talking about. That's a foolish statement. There's so much space to spread out here, so much space. And by Los Angeles standards, there is no traffic out here. The traffic actually ends at a certain time of day. I would say in the mornings, you'll see some traffic between about 7 and 8:30 is where there's a little more traffic, but it's about maybe it adds an extra 15 minutes to your delay. No big deal. In the afternoon, you see it between about 4:30 and 6 o'clock, and then game over. That's it. But it's not a giant parking lot everywhere. Mm-hmm. The traffic is not bad at all. It is not overpopulated. There's plenty of room to spread out in. But many people are also trying to replace one subdivision with another. So maybe you have to think a little creatively of how you relocate and where you put your next house.
Well, that was what I was also going to ask you. So when you were looking at Nashville, you kind of imagined you live in a subdivision, but that didn't work out. Tell me where you live now. It sounds wonderful.
So we were looking primarily because we didn't know anybody out here. I had one friend from the music business that I had to sit there and listen to him talk about Nashville this and Nashville that all the time. But he's the only person that I knew from Nashville that lived out here. So we didn't know where we had to go. We don't have kids, so we didn't have to worry about schools. By the way, schools are amazing out here wherever you go. I wouldn't really rely on those rankings, but or the ones that you see on Zillow or Redfin or whatnot. But we were looking at a lot of the usual places between this area called Green Hills, Brentwood, Franklin. And, I was also thinking of, okay, where should we have our office? Because we need to get an office for our business. And because I didn't have a clear answer, and commercial real estate at the time was a little bit weird, it wasn't as developed as it is now, I just didn't want to take a risk on such a commitment because I didn't have the area sort of wired down, at the moment. So as we were looking, we happened to wake up one morning and we're watching some show called We Bought the Farm on HGTV. And we were like, we never really looked at property. I wonder where we can get property. I thought it was very far out of reach. So we looked, and the first house that showed up had been sitting on the market. By the way, it's only 25 minutes from downtown Nashville, but it had been sitting on the market for 2.5 years. And we were like, something must be wrong with it, right? But as I was looking at the property, I was like, you know what? There's something above that garage. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't say anything about that square footage. And it's actually the room that I'm sitting in right now, which is this carriage house. And right to my right over here, we have a full kitchen. There's a bathroom back there, full bathroom. We have this giant space. I mean, this is a fantastic apartment to have on our property, detached from the house above the garage. And in addition to that, we have a beautiful giant barn on the property. And so I was like, you know what? If this all works out, that barn is going to be our new warehouse, and that carriage house is going to be our new office for the time being. Well, I'll tell you what, I showed up here, and when we walked into the house, again, it had been sitting on the market for 2.5 years, and we walk in, and our realtor was like, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that, that I was going to be bringing you to the place like this." I'm like, "Why? What's wrong with it?" And of course, the house was very outdated, right? But it was very beautiful on the outside. And I see the potential. And so we walk in, I'm like, "What's wrong with it?" She's like, "Oh, don't you smell that?" I'm like, "Smell what?" She's like, "Well, don't you smell the cigarettes?" I'm like, I took a huge breath and I'm like, "You know what? I don't smell cigarettes." She's like, "What do you mean you don't smell any cigarettes?" I'm like, "I smell a discount is what I smell." And so I'm like, you know what? This house just needs some paint. It needs a few light fixtures. I think we could work with this. I would rather put a little bit of work into this house because it's almost 3,400 square feet. I'm like, I got to go for it. And so we ended up putting an offer. So within a couple of days, we showed up here, and it was great because I was able to pulverize the existing owners because the house had been on the market for 2.5 years. Now that was in 2017. Our house has almost doubled in appreciation since. And it's a lot of money, and it's very expensive at the moment. So as is everything in this market. However, what I encourage everyone to do is, especially if you have a business and with the way and then of course now with the pandemic, working at home is not such a big deal. So I'm in no rush to go get commercial space because I have about 3,000 square feet in a barn that is all outfitted as a warehouse, and it serves our purpose, and I have a great office, and my employees all work remotely for the most part. So what I encourage everyone to do is to look a little further beyond the city or the metro area or even the suburbs, because you could find so much beauty. And I didn't think I'd love living in the country because I've never lived like this, but I absolutely love it. It's a little more work involved, to take care of, the acreage that we have. But there's nothing like the freedom that you get, the beauty, just the memories that you can create on a property like this are pretty phenomenal. And yes, we have acquired a whole bunch of animals. I think we have 22 animals right now. So yeah, we're having fun with it. We're literally living the Tennessee lifestyle.
Yeah.
So
and I think it's interesting for me having, because I own 2 houses in Georgia. And even we bought them for like 120,000, and now they've appreciated, and they're probably $200,000 houses. But I talk to so many people in California who say, I can't afford to live in my dream state. And what I always say is, you may not be living in a house that's 2 years old. You may be living in a house from the 70s that you have to put some work into. But if your dream is to leave California to be somewhere, if you go further out of a city, you go older and maybe a little bit less square footage, you'll still have this amazing lifestyle. You compromise slightly on maybe where you're living, so that you can live that lifestyle. And ultimately, as long as you've got a roof over your head and you can update bathrooms and kitchens, and if the outside of your house is a 1970s house, it really doesn't matter because of the memories and the lifestyle.
It is phenomenal what you can still get out here for the price, but a lot of people aren't looking to move. You know what it is very few people have the vision to see what's going on. When I started coming out to this area about 15 years ago, Franklin, which is the most popular town out here, it looked completely different. Nobody would have wanted to. I didn't even care to move out here back when I saw Franklin 15 years ago. But when you see it now, of course, everybody wants to move here. It looks like a freaking Hallmark movie, right? But if you look at Columbia, 20 minutes further south, that area reminds you of what Franklin looked like 15 years ago. And I'll tell you what, because nobody can get property in Williamson County around Franklin right now, where do you think everybody's moving to? They're all moving further south. So Columbia is about to blow up. You have people like Sheryl Crow, the guy from that movie or that TV show, American Pickers. they're buying up all this beautiful commercial space and flipping it around and turning it into amazing commercial retail space just to continue developing that whole area. And it is changing fast and it's beautiful, and you still can live that sort of country Tennessee lifestyle. And you're about maybe 40-45 minutes from downtown. You're 10-15 minutes from Spring Hill, 20 minutes from Franklin. It's piece of cake. Again, because there's no traffic, everything flows. That is an amazing area. People aren't looking that further south, right? They're wanting it easy. Migrating is not an easy thing. So you got to be prepared for the challenges and compromise, right? But I'll tell you what you could still get for a very reasonable price in Colombia beats anything that you can get in California. So depending on the budget, you got to look for it. And I wouldn't be too caught up on the school ranking. You know what? It's just go park your car outside of one of the schools anywhere out in this area. And if you look at the kids coming out of school, you're going to realize that they're all kids that have great parents. They're all well-dressed kids that look like they're being cared for, and they're coming from great families. Test scores and all that's all, relative, and it shakes out in a different way. But what I would say is that if you park your car outside of a lot of schools in California, primarily the Los Angeles area, they look like state penitentiaries, not schools. So that's my opinion about
And I would add to that.
Yeah,
I would add to that because I've got a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. When we were in Tampa, they were in a school that was rated 9 out of 10. And my son still managed to fail because often it's not the school, it's the kid. And now he's in a school in California that I think is like a 5 out of 10, but he's decided he's going to work. And he's getting a much better education in a school that has a lower ranking just because he's decided he's going to step up. Well,
community is everything. So that makes a big difference.
Well, thank you. You've done an amazing kind of publicity for the Nashville area. And I'm sure anyone who watches this video who's maybe thought they wanted to move to Nashville and thought they couldn't because it was too expensive or it was too difficult, hopefully everything that you've told them has inspired them and changed their mind. And I very much appreciate you talking to me today.
I am glad I had the opportunity. I encourage everyone to come out here to be part of what's happening here. It's an amazing place. And we need more like-minded folks to continue moving out this way. We all have an opportunity to shape everything that's happening here. So, bring your best out to Tennessee for sure. You'll be very welcome here.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And wherever this video is posted, if you look in the comments, I'll also link to Alfredo's business because it's a really fun business. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.